Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are going to be discussing the return of the Triforce in the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It appears that finally the Triforce is going to be playing a significant role in this Zelda story, and not only do I think this could have some major impacts on what we'll see throughout this particular game that is Echoes of Wisdom, but also potentially some interesting implications for overall Zelda lore, perhaps even including Tears of the Kingdom. And so that's what we'll be diving further into today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So for those who are unfamiliar, what is the Triforce? Well, the Triforce is the combination of the three different sacred triangles, each of these triangles having been left by the goddesses that formed the land of Hyrule. Din, the goddess of power, Faror, the goddess of courage, and Nehru, the goddess of wisdom. The top piece representing the Triforce of power, the left piece representing the Triforce of wisdom, and the right piece representing the Triforce of courage. In some of the Zelda games, these different Triforce pieces were in possession by some of the key characters of the series. Link typically has the Triforce of courage, Ganondorf has the Triforce of power, and Princess Zelda has the Triforce of wisdom. Now the thing about Princess Zelda though, is that she shares an ancestral line with Goddess Hylia, who at one point was responsible for protecting the land and the Triforce. When these Triforce pieces are not in possession by these characters though, the Triforce is said to be hidden in the Sacred Realm. But if one can acquire the whole Triforce together, then it will grant you any wish. This is why we have seen Ganon attempt to acquire the whole Triforce in the past, because by doing so, it will allow him to rule the land for however long he chooses to reign. And we have seen Triforce being used to actually make a wish in the past. For example, King Daphnis from the Wind Waker used the Triforce to wash away the old land of Hyrule, and providing Link and Zelda with a new future. But as important as the Triforce may appear to be for the Zelda series, we don't see it prevalent in every single game. In the most recent new Zelda games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the Triforce took on somewhat of an unexpected role. So in Breath of the Wild, we didn't see Link have the Triforce of Courage, we didn't see Ganondorf with the Triforce of Power, and we're not entirely sure if we saw Zelda with the Triforce of Wisdom, because it seems more like Princess Zelda herself had the entire Triforce, taking on more of a role somewhat like Goddess Hylia, and just using that entire power to hold back Calamity Ganon for over 100 years, and then to blitz him at the end once he was weakened by Link. And that's pretty much all we saw of the Triforce in Breath of the Wild. However, going into its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, there was a thought that maybe we could see a more prominent role of the Triforce here. Because not only would Princess Zelda be taking on a more prominent role and sharing in that connection to the Sheikah, who are typically depicted by blue, as is the Triforce of Wisdom, but then you also have Link working more closely with the Zonai, depicted by green, which is also used to depict the Triforce of Courage, and then you have the return of Ganondorf, with this seemingly even more potent version of Malice in Gloom, that is more of a red color, which is used to depict the Triforce of Power. So there is definitely this motif of these three different characters engaging with each other, and so there was this perfect opportunity to reinsert the story of the Triforce and these three different pieces. There was even a potentially obvious path to the Sacred Realm with all the heavenly-like Sky Islands, but there was no real significant evidence of the Triforce being in this game, even less so than what we saw in Breath of the Wild. So it's left a lot of questions about the whereabouts of the Triforce and what's going on with it, and even a concern of how much we'll see it in future games. But now we have a new Zelda game that's coming out in just a few couple short months in The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and I think we're seeing some pretty significant signs of the Triforce returning. Let's start with the opening scene in the announcement trailer. We have Link battling out with Ganon, and Princess Zelda is captured in this pink-like diamond structure. The scene to me is very reminiscent of what we saw in Ocarina of Time, where Link was battling Ganondorf, while Zelda was captured in this pink-like diamond. A moment where there was a struggle over the Triforce pieces. To me, this scene feels like a reference to that battle. Now, that may just be a subtle clue, but there's some more obvious hints throughout the trailer. We have this one scene where Princess Zelda is approaching the Deku Tree, and right there on the ground right before them is a depiction of the Triforce. I think clearly this is going to play a vital role to the story. Going beyond that though, literally looking at the title of the game, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Wisdom is the trait of the left golden triangle, that part of the Triforce. And the Triforce of Wisdom has been possessed by Princess Zelda over the different games, and this particular game is starring who? Princess Zelda herself. But then going beyond that, we have this mysterious fairy, Tri. Tri, perhaps short for Triforce or a piece of the Triforce, who has these golden triangles as a tail following it along. Now, at first we see 3 triangles. One might think 3 triangles, the Triforce, right? Well, we do see more triangles later on to the trailer, and I do think this is a hint towards us getting more triangles for gameplay reasons. But the point is that this character is named Tri, similar to the Triforce, and has golden triangles like the Triforce. And Tri grants Princess Zelda the Tri-Rod, and with it she's able to create echoes of different items throughout the world. Hence the title, Echoes of Wisdom. Princess Zelda has to use her wisdom to create different echoes of these different items throughout the world to navigate and puzzle solve throughout the adventure. So the title of the game, Echoes of Wisdom, not only do I think it's a reference to the Triforce itself, but also the overall direction of Princess Zelda, which is using her wisdom to triumph. Link uses courage, which is why we see Link taking on very daunting tasks with his courage, but in this game, it's about Zelda using her wit, her mind, her wisdom. And what I find extra interesting here is that she's being depicted somewhat of a spellcaster or mage. Not too different from how she was depicted in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I would say. I would assume these are 2 different iterations of Zelda, but this idea that the character is wise and intelligent, that's also the case for Zelda in Breath and Tears, but also with her access to goddess powers, she has the ability using different forms of golden light or magic to do different things, kind of like a mage or spellcaster. And so in Echoes of Wisdom, she literally has a rod of magic, a tri-rod, to create the Echoes of Wisdom. But the main point I'm trying to get to here is that this golden triangle power from Tri, this mysterious fairy that Zelda runs into in this dungeon alone, I think it's an embodiment of her own goddess powers. And so I think we're definitely going to be learning more about Princess Zelda and her abilities with the goddess powers, but also her connection to the Triforce, specifically the Triforce of Wisdom. But with Echoes of Wisdom's title literally referencing a piece to the Triforce, I have to think that we're going to be seeing an expanded story on the Triforce overall. Usually the title of a Zelda game does not reference the Triforce directly, even when it does have a prominent role. But this time, they are, so I'm thinking there's definitely going to be something significant about the Triforce we'll be learning in this game. And going a bit further, we do have these rifts that we're seeing different people fall through, including Link himself. What happened to Link? What's going on with Ganon? When we take a look at the key art, we're seeing an angry version of Link with a different style of sword, and even Ganon himself appears to potentially be possessed here. Regardless of what exactly is happening, what is clear is that there is some sort of mystery having to do with at least Link, and it does get me wondering on how they may play a role with the Triforce as they have in the past. But even going beyond that, with these rifts and this other realm that's being explored, it does call into question other realms, perhaps even the Sacred Realm where the Triforce is typically housed. And this all reminds me somewhat of the situation in A Link Between Worlds, where there was Lorule, another realm that was explored, and eventually we ran into the Sacred Realm, where there was a Triforce. It seems like possibly a similar situation, so I wouldn't be surprised if we run into the Sacred Realm again in Echoes of Wisdom. But could there be anything about Echoes of Wisdom that may shed some light on some of the mysteries from prior Zelda games, like Tears of the Kingdom and the lack of a Triforce? I think the answer is potentially yes. Now I recognize that maybe there could be some timeline disconnects here, so not necessarily, but also that's not really clear right now. Technically, all we know about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is that they are set very late into the timeline, and there's still debate on the beginning or founding of Hyrule, if that's a true first founding of Hyrule or a second founding of Hyrule, and that's just how far into the future these games take place. It's not certain. But a few things that I find interesting that I think could perhaps connect Echoes of Wisdom to Breath and Tears is that we have seen that most of the 2D Zelda games fall under the Downfall timeline. And it's in the Downfall timeline where we've seen Lionel's, which we also see in Breath and Tears. It doesn't necessarily confirm anything because there are contradictions no matter what angle you look at, but I think it's interesting to consider at least. And also, when looking at what we've seen so far of the world of Hyrule in Echoes of Wisdom, it does seem to share some similarities to the world of Hyrule in Breath and Tears. For example, the Faron region is very tropical. This is a new style of Faron that we haven't seen until the Switch Zelda games, Breath, Tears, and now Echoes of Wisdom. So maybe there is a deeper connection here. From a gameplay perspective, this concept of giving you an ability early on that has a wide variety of applications, and thus you can play the game in so many different ways, that thinking we saw in Breath of the Wild, it was expanded upon in Tears of the Kingdom, and we're now seeing it adapted to top-down 2D Zelda as well in Echoes of Wisdom. So I really don't think it's a total stretch to say that maybe there could be some sort of story elements we see in Echoes of Wisdom that might give us some clue as to what's going on in Tears. As I discussed earlier, we're seeing Princess Zelda depicted more as a spellcaster who has this special connection to her goddess powers, as we saw in Breath and Tears, and now we're seeing more of it in this new game. Even if there's not necessarily like a story connection to Tears, maybe simply the idea that Princess Zelda subconsciously, in a moment of need, was able to create this mysterious fairy Tri that was able to create the Tri-Rod for her, where she can now start using these Echoes of Wisdom. If that's all a representation of her Triforce of Wisdom, then maybe it wouldn't be a stretch to think that what she did in Tears of the Kingdom with her Time and Light powers might also be an expression of her connection to the Triforce of Wisdom. And if that's the case, perhaps we could take this further, and the abilities that Link is able to express could be related to his deep connection to a Triforce of Courage, even if it's not blatantly expressed, and maybe also Ganon as well. I did find it interesting that without an obvious Triforce of Courage, Ganondorf in Tears was still able to take the tear and reach a level of power that was omnipotent, a level of power akin to perhaps a god, or the King of Demons. And thinking a little bit more on it, these situations where we're seeing them power up or transform in some way, it's very similar to when we saw Link transform into a wolf in Twilight Princess. The only difference is that we saw a Triforce on his hand in Twilight Princess. So maybe that's something that could be expressed further in Echoes of Wisdom, this idea that each character, even if it's not expressed blatantly with a literal triangle on their hand, they each have this inherent power to express wisdom, power, or courage when the appropriate conditions are met, regardless of what game or timeline they're in. But what do you think? Do you think we'll learn more about the Triforce in The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom? Will it just pertain to the story of Echoes of Wisdom? Or could there perhaps be something there that will connect us to other Zelda games, maybe even Tears of the Kingdom? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.